Lieutenant General William Caldwell is here. He runs a combined arms center at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, sometimes called the intellectual center of the United States Army. The New York Times said Fort Leavenworth has become a front line in the military's tension and soul-searching over Iraq. It has also produced a new field manual. It says that in future conflicts, nation-building will be as important, if not more so, as traditional combat operations. I am pleased to have General Caldwell at this table for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
The idea of nation building is now part of the Army mission, and it wasn't that way in 2001 or whenever it was the last field manual.
And that's correct. As you know, this manual is the blueprint for where our Army is going to go into the future, next 10 or 15 years. And so it was written with the intent of looking where we've been over the last couple of years and trying to figure out how we're going to chart through this uncertain future that lies ahead of us.
Looking at Iraq and Afghanistan primarily.
That's correct. And one of the key things in there, you know, our traditional mission has been offense, defense, a real destructive power, the capability to take down any enemy. But what we haven't had is that other hand that, as we say, where you extend the hand and you help bring back the economy, you know, and build it back up to where it's viable, it's stable, and it's self-sustaining.
Some might say it's taken the Army a long time to learn this. I mean, was this reality first apparent in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Charlie, I tell you that I was there in Panama, and I was there in the aftermath when we started figuring out how to pick up trash in Panama City and get the police force stood up. I was there in Haiti. We did the same things all over again. We have been learning and relearning this, and what we have traditionally done is once that kind of operation is over, we go back to what we call high-end operations, the ability to conduct lethal warfare, and that's where we put our focus. And our mindset has been that if we can do that, we can do anything lesser than that, such as nation building when required. What we have realized out of this conflict is that's not the case. There are, in fact, specialized kind of skills and people and organizations and equipment that we need to have resident in the United States Army that we didn't have before 9/11 that need to be there today.
So you're going to train your young leaders in a different way?
In an additive way. We'll still train them the way we have before.
To use force against force.
That's correct. We still have to maintain that capability, but we now need to also have them able to do stability operations.
And how do they feel about that, those that are in the field today?
Those in the field today, you know, and again, I'm speaking from experience just having come back last June, recognize that we need more instruction in that area. Now, the young men and women over there are doing a wonderful job. I mean, absolutely incredible job. I have watched young lieutenants, literally, when I have gone into little towns, they're sitting there drinking tea with a shake, where 30 minutes later they're out surveying where they're going to help put a road in.
Tea with a shake as in a leader of the country.
As a leader of
that tribe.
Of the tribe or that area, that's correct. And then next they're out there on the roads surveying where they're going to put a road in. I mean, this is a young officer, 2 years out of college, in charge of a group of 18 men and women, and making those kind of decisions. And then the next minute they have a sniper firing at them, and they're taking reactive drills, and they're eliminating that threat.
But they know that if the population is more favorably inclined to them and is not hiding the enemy, rather cooperating with you, you're in a better place.
That's exactly right.
When you look at what happened in Iraq, is it the conclusion of all those scholars that come to Leavenworth, all those people with all that experience, including you, that this thing might have been very different if we'd understood the nature of what we now understand?
What I would say, Charlie, is the assumptions that we made going in needed to have been revisited probably sooner than we did. Yeah. And some of the assumptions we made did not come.
When did we start revisiting the assumptions?
Boy, that's a good question. At different times, different people were looking at them and asking what was going on. But, you know, a major assumption we made was that the economy would be able to, that there would be leaders in Iraq that would come in and sort of bring the economy back up on its feet, provide the leadership that was needed. And in fact, that didn't happen.
Well, the idea was that the oil revenues would pay for the reconstruction of Iraq, articulated by the Deputy Secretary of Defense.
Well, and that's exactly right. That was another assumption that was made, and that has taken much longer. You know, now this year, for the first time, we'll in fact see oil revenues allowing an annual budget over there of about $50 billion. Where just 2 years ago, it was about $27 billion.
But all revenues will contribute $50 billion to the budget.
Right at, well, I'd say
in
47,
2007 or so.
About $47 billion
Right.
is the projection for this year, 2008.
And what will it be in 2009? Is it exponentially growing?
Not exponentially. And the challenges that they're going to have, if the government of Iraq does not put money, invest it back into the infrastructure, they're going to have challenges. It has to put money into their infrastructure. They won't see an immediate return, but it will ensure a sustainable return.
What is the relationship between this and all kinds of counterinsurgency lessons and techniques that have come out of this war?
The relationship, I would tell you, is out there at Fort Leavenworth. We have the Center for Army Lessons Learned.
Right.
So we take all these lessons that we've been learning from the effort over there and from the units as they come back, and they've been captured into this manual. Not literally every tactical lesson, but the larger strategic lessons in terms of how are we going to focus on who's the most important element of an organization. We go much more to a commander-centric organization versus a hardware type of technology focus. We take a look at this manual and you'll find that there's a huge focus on information. In the 21st century, the information domain has possibilities that are unlimited. You know, some people refer to it today as cyberspace out there. And what we can do with that and how our opposition, our enemies, our adversaries using it today very effectively tells us that we need to grow and learn more in that area.
New York Times did a piece maybe a month ago about General, and I hope I say this right, Odierno.
That's correct.
Am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
All right. He's coming back. He's been there for, several years. And I think he's going to be changing his...
He is. He's going to be the number 2 person in the United States Army.
Exactly. So he's Deputy Chief of Staff or whatever
That's
he
correct.
is. They talked about him as a living, breathing example of someone who had to learn this. He was the hardest driving, toughest Army officer over there. And he looked it too. And now he understands this. I mean, that his life has been the evolution of the Army's lessons, now reflected in all the smart people at Leavenworth who are putting it in a manual. Am I right about this?
No.
You had to know him and work with him when you were there.
I did. We're classmates out of the United States Military Academy. You know, Ray was on his second combat tour there. He had commanded a division over there very successfully early in the war. He's had a son that served there.
Exactly. Was his son injured or was...
His son lost an arm.
Lost an arm, right.
Was severely wounded over there. And then now Ray's been back as a corps commander, commanding all the ground forces in Iraq, and has done a magnificent job. But you are correct. He came in probably with a much more heavy-handed, combat-focused type approach, and did recognize as he continued to assess the situation on the ground, which good commanders do, and make changes as appropriate, and he did it. And really embraced a lot of what our Army today says is so critical, having that balance between combat and stability operations.
What kind of battles do you think the Army will be facing in the future beyond Iraq?
For the next 10 or 15 years, we talk about in there being a very uncertain future. We would love to be predictable as to what will occur. What we do know is there's going to be some real challenges. Our Chief of Staff calls it an era of persisting conflict. He does not see, even if
this
today...
Is General Casey?
This is General Casey.
Okay.
Even if we relieved Iraq today and Afghanistan tomorrow, there would still be conflict out there because we are in a period of time in the world today where there's a shortage of resources, there's unstable governments, there's the haves and the have-nots, and there's a lot of challenges that the world is going to face over the next 10 to 15 years. They're going to have to be dealt with.
What are the lessons of Iraq? I mean, I think they're here, but in part. But how do you see it, having served there? The lessons that the military and the civilians at the Pentagon should have learned.
And I can tell you, General Casey will be the first to tell you, the one that is probably the most important is the need for our officers and our non-commissioned officers and our young soldiers to be culturally astute as into the area which they're going to operate. And we're bringing that into our educational systems. We're adding that as part of our
language
training
skills
base.
And the like.
Language skills, cultural understanding of the area of the operation, studying the nature of the people and their customs and their courtesies. Yeah. Before we probably did it very cursory, look at it all. But now we're doing a much more in-depth look at these things before we, in fact, commit military force into certain areas. And so we're going to do that across the whole Army. We're going to put a much greater emphasis on language skills. You'll see many, many more officers now having a language capability that at different times will have different levels of proficiency, but with the intent that they have a base that they can draw from, depending on where they're going to go, and then perhaps even orient them to parts of the world where they will, in fact, do continual studies and emphasis throughout their career, so that if we were to go into that area for some reason, that they would have a better understanding of what's been going on for many years there.
ABC News, Jonathan Karl, is reporting on their website that they have a copy of another Army document, which basically says clearly there was no relationship between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. Have you seen that? Can you comment on that?
Well, no, I have not. I have not seen that manual.
Yeah, a report. I assume it was a report rather than a manual. Basically, the Army had gone out and talked to two sources, with at least two. One, they talked to a lot of people on the ground there, as well as people who were under arrest and had been interrogated by, Army officials. Basically saying we found no evidence. Not that Saddam support terrorism. He did.
Correct.
But the point they make is it was primarily against his own people.
Right, and we do know he supported some terrorism outside of Iraq, I think you can show. But
this is a report from the military. There was no link between Saddam and al-Qaeda. Now, the president essentially said that, too, in terms of al-Qaeda as the people who are responsible for 9/11.
Right. Yeah, I haven't seen that report. But, I don't think that's...
You don't quarrel with the idea that I expressed, do you?
No, not necessarily. But, whenever you support any terrorism, it's tough to attribute it to one particular group or another. Anybody who's acting in a subversive manner, when you try to label, even in Iraq today, when somebody tries to label a specific element as an al-Qaeda element, I was always very cautious about that, because how do you really know if they are or aren't? Every now and then it's unequivocal. But most of the time, it's based upon many factors that you look at that you say, therefore, they must have been an al-Qaeda element.
And that's part of the battle against terrorism globally.
That's correct. That's right.
In a new age.
And it's just tough pinning it to. And, in this information age today, these terrorist organizations can operate in a very decentralized manner, dispersed throughout the world, and are able to spread ideology, targeting, messaging at a much faster rate in very small elements where they never could before.
It's a pleasure to have you on the broadcast. We look forward to visiting the Army at Fort Leavenworth. Here it is, Operation, the new field manual, laying out a new strategy for warfare, lessons learned in Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, that it's also about, as said in another war, it's about hearts and minds as well as force.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us, too.